Right, okay, so let's carry on with question 171. It's a bit of theory. It says we'll do 171 to 175. A company has calculated that its fixed overhead expenditure variance, and I mentioned earlier on that this is pretty much the difference between your budget and what you thought it was going to be and what it actually was. And that literally is actual fixed overheads have been more than were budgeted. It's just what actually happened. It could have been rent. You thought your rent was going to be 12, you ended up paying 14. That's the expenditure variance. In fact, that's the only real variance with the fixed overhead expenditure. Okay, great. So a company has identified they have adverse labor efficiency variance, an adverse efficiency variance, labor efficiency. So they're using more time, they're spending more time making these products than they should. Definitely it can't be a better learning curve. Staff can't be happier. If you would have, this would be the reverse. The use of better quality. No, that's not true. It must be due to idle time, disruption, stoppages, and that's the answer there. So the answer is D. The answer is D for question 1 there. Okay, great. Question 173. I kind of worked this out. I guess all our brains are different, but I'm going to work it out. But the first thing I want to highlight, the little trick here, be careful, is that when we talk about, if you remember mix and yield, when we talk about especially when we're making products that need several components, we can talk about mix and yield. So for example, with chemicals. Now this is important. When we talk about the actual material cost variance, there is a price variance, material price variance, and there is a usage variance. And that usage variance is made up of a mix and a yield variance. So the usage variance actually is made up of mix and yield. So when you see this type of question, when you have the usage variance there, well, that is, those two variances are making up that 750, right? The 900 and the 150. So be careful not to, almost double counting if you include them when you're trying to work out this kind of reconciliation, trying to understand the differences between what actually happened and what should have happened. So immediately when you have this kind of scenario, you cannot use, well, it doesn't matter. Either you cross this out and use these two, but you cannot use these two figures, because these two figures of 900 adverse and 150 favorable make up the 750 adverse. That's what's happening here. And you have a price variance here of 500 favorable, right? That's kind of the picture here, if you like. And therefore, if you can see straight away, if you have a 500 favorable picture here, and you have a 750 adverse, you have technically a 250 adverse. So you could really have gone all the way up and just said we have a material cost variance of 250 adverse. And the same with your labor rate variance. Let's just look at what's happening here. You have an efficiency, you have a labor rate variance of 400 favorable, and you have an efficiency variance of 200 adverse. So technically you have a labor rate variance, just the actual labor rate variance, of 200 favorable. So in a way I could have almost isolated these to just these two if I wanted to, right? And then it says that initial budgeted profit was 12,000. What is the actual scenario here? So really here, in effect, what am I saying? So I have a material cost variance that is, well, 250 more than I thought I would in terms of actuality, what's actually happened. So that's weakened. That's less. That's made our budgeted profits less because the costs have gone up. So that's, if you like, adverse. That's brought profits down. But we did well by 200 favorable, if you like, adding on to that, and that should give you 12,000 minus 250 plus 200 is 11,950. So that's kind of one way of looking at it. I just wanted to show you how we originally arrive here, but and that's that. So that's 11,950. I think another way I want to do it, I'm just going to rub all this out, is traditionally how students would do it is they would think, okay, I'm trying to find the I'm trying to arrive at the trying to sort of add this up. It's a traditional way of typically, when I say traditional, is adding, subtracting. So in effect, what we're saying, the budgeted profit is 12,000, and now we have an actual profit. I don't know what that is. I'm trying to get there. So again, like what I said here, I'm just going to take these step by step. So a £500 favorable variance increases my profit, and a 750 weakens it. So that's my standard. I've found prices better by 500, so that's good. Then a labor rate variance of 400 improves my profit, and a £200 weakens it, and I will arrive at my what actually happens. So when I do this now, 12,000 plus 500 minus 750 plus 400 minus 200, I will get again 11,950. You can see I've gotten rid of these two because these two are actually the material usage variance, the same thing. So I'll just apply the same principle, but then again, like I say, now they give me actual, and somehow for as long as I've taught, I've never really been able to. I don't know, I've always had this thing in my head of doing it like this. I know what actual is, so this time I'm given actual 10,000. I don't know what my standard is. I can never put actual on top. It's just maths. It's just how you see it. But the key principle is the same. I have a standard, and this time you can see they don't give us mix and yield. So the standard is telling me here that in terms of my, this is talking about costs now. If the costs were actually 10,000, so I had a standard cost, and my material price variance would have a favorable variance of 500, right? Just be careful. A favorable variance of 500 would have reduced my costs because it's favorable. 750 would have increased my costs. 250 would have reduced my costs. It's favorable. 300 would have increased my costs. 600 would have increased my costs. And 200 would have increased my costs. So these two are the breakdown of the volume for variable, which is why we can use the both of them. If you were just given the variable volume, you would ignore these two, or either use these two and ignore volume, but there you are. So this is this is where I am with this. So I basically am saying this minus this plus this minus this plus this plus this plus this gives me 10,000. The question is, what is this? So I typically work backwards and I add this. I basically now turn this on its head and therefore say, if I'm trying to get basically x minus 500 plus 750 minus 250 plus 300 plus 600 plus 200 is equal to 10,000. And I'm trying to find what x is. So I literally flick the whole thing up on its side. And if you flick the whole thing on its side, you will get D. Right? You'll get D. You just literally. So the key point is knowing that with costs, favorable means it reduces that standard cost. It reduces what we thought it was. So we're not adding it onto it. We're reducing the cost. I think that's the important lesson more than anything else. And pretty much the same thing here again. You have this standard. This time they give you material usage, and then they give you mix and yield again. Look at that. That exactly is the same thing as 750. So you ignore these guys, ignore them, and just work with the usage. Again, what I was saying is favorable brings down my cost by 500. 750 increases it. 250 brings it down, and 300 increases it, and I'm at 10,000 again. So I'm trying to go back again to find out what this is. So really it's the 10,000. Again, it's x minus 500 plus 750 minus 250 minus, plus 300. That gives me 10,000. So the question is, what is x? I just have to work backwards. So technically this is 10,000 minus 300 plus 250 minus 750 plus 500, literally. And you do all this and you will get 9,700. 9,700. Cool, great. And that's question 171 to 175.